I guess I'll call 2022 City Planning Commission meeting to order. And could we have the roll call done?
Mr. McGorry?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Ms. Castile? Here. Mr. Jackson? Mr. Pajali?
Here.
Mr. Whalen?
Here.
Mr. Zuloff?
Here.
It appears we have a quorum. Is it appropriate to ask that Mr. Jackson be excused?
You asked that last time.
And
You
we
know,
don't need to do that?
We've never done that.
Okay.
It's City Commission needs it. It's in the ordinance. It's in the
Okay.
charter.
Okay, next on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the January 26, 2022 meeting. For discussion purposes, would anybody care to move that those minutes be approved as submitted?
Chairman, I'll move they be approved as submitted.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Pajali seconded, moved and seconded. Any discussion? I had, when I read them, and I wish I read them late at night and I didn't mark them. One, I remember, it was mentioned in the minutes, and I don't remember remembering it being discussed, that in the discussion of the RV park off of First Street, it was mentioned in the minutes that it was possible that some owner RVs would be used for Airbnb rentals in the minutes. I don't remember that being discussed. And Mr. Oakes, I had actually asked you about boats, and I'm kind of likening boats to RVs, and I think your answer regarding boats was that any transient rental has to be a structure which is defined as having 4 fixed walls. So that may be something that we need to pay attention to. I don't know that the minutes need to be amended. I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, are you suggesting that there's something missing from the minutes, or there's something in the minutes?
Something in there that I don't
that wasn't
remember being,
discussed.
but if it was said, it seems to contravene what was specifically mentioned in response to my question about boats. An RV, I think, is the same kind of a concept as a boat.
Could I propose that the secretary review the minutes, and maybe we can address those minutes next month?
That'd be fine.
Could you draw my attention to that reference, or?
It's I don't know exactly where it is but it's under the Cross Bay site plan application on page 4 of what we have in front of us, and paragraph 2, I believe it's in there. And it was just talking about the RV rental park.
Okay, so let me make that a motion that we defer the minutes approval and pending review of the
Yes, I see the line in the third
tape.
sentence.
Okay, I would second that motion. It's been moved and seconded to defer approval of these minutes. If that's procedurally appropriate, I guess we can do
Sure.
it. So, all in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, been moved, seconded, and approved.
And Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
just my faulty recollection, that doesn't surprise me at all. I think I do remember that discussion,
yeah.
that generally people pull them through, but that the owner of the property might have some available.
They have some limitation, but it kind of seemed in the minutes like they might want to do that. And I just don't know what's doable under the current.
I got you.
Yeah, we were,
Mr. Chairman, if I may add
We've
to
handled
that. So there is a separate transient rental application process, so that's something that would be addressed when that would be applied for. And like that definition specifically would be reviewed. So I think as far as the last meeting is concerned, I think we're okay with what was approved, but I will still put together a slide for the next meeting addressing the definition of what transient rental is allowable and what isn't, so that there isn't any confusion going forward.
yeah. But the question is what the words were,
Right,
which is
correct.
what the minutes have to show. And
Yeah.
we voted on a motion to defer it,
To defer, so we
we need
address
to
that
move on to
in
the next
meeting.
item.
Okay. Next item on the agenda today is Planning Commission appointment of a CRA Housing Council member. And I don't know if that's been discussed by staff or the city commission, or does anybody on this commission?
Mr. Chairman, I've been doing it for a while as the liaison or representative. I'd be happy to, pass that on. I've done it for a while.
Okay.
If anybody else would like to do it, I don't mind continuing to do it, but if anybody would like to get involved in that part of it, it really, not much happens. Every once in a while, there's a meeting and you have to be there, so.
Yeah. Again, unless somebody else has some other thoughts, I have heard no other proposal other than what Mr. Zuloff just said, so I'm personally fine with you continuing. I would make a motion that he continue as the CRA.
Second.
Okay, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, congratulations.
Thank you for your vote of confidence.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is actually a public hearing. If I'm saying the name correctly, Tavare Jamel LLC submitted an application for an amendment to the zoning map at 629 East Adams Street. I'm not going to read the parcel number. The application is to amend the zoning map to expand the transient rental overlay district to include this address. And perhaps staff could educate us a little bit more on that.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So 629 East Adams Street is currently zoned R2F two-family residential, and it is surrounded by the same zoning R2F two-family residential. Currently used as a residential property, and they propose to expand the transient overlay boundary over their parcel. So the R2F zoning will remain, it just will have an overlay. On top of it. So the site at 629 East Adams is roughly 1,200 square feet and has several off-street parking spaces in a driveway format. So this proposal does meet the city's bicentennial vision in our comprehensive plan, and there's several strong recommendations that staff feels that this hits, which is a livable city. So this supports the development and rehabilitation. A variety of housing types are classified in this description, and the one that is most prominent to this application is a short-term transient rental that this would meet, and then also this makes Sandusky more of a destination city. So the zoning changes to encourage hospitality to determine transient rental overlays such as this, hotels and other hospitality. Our comprehensive plan has points that we want to see these type of redevelopment happening to further encourage this as a destination city. So understanding the goals set for this area by the comprehensive plan and the reasons previously stated, staff believes this rezoning could satisfy the above conditions. And due to the fact that the property is adjacent to the current overlay, which is a requirement to expand, staff would support the zoning amendment. Lastly, if the applicant desires these properties to be utilized for transient rental, they would have a separate application that would be reviewed by the zoning department and also the code enforcement department. Other departments in the city didn't have any concerns with this proposal. So that being said, staff recommends the approval of the zoning map amendment at 629 East Adams Street with the following conditions, and that one condition is that all applicable permits are obtained through the building department, engineering department, and then other applicable agencies.
So, just so I understand it, it's actually a request that the overlay district be expanded. That in and of itself wouldn't essentially qualify this particular parcel for transient rental. It would have to meet all the current existing requirements.
That's correct.
Off-street parking.
Yep. So that would all be reviewed.
Examination.
A later process,
Yeah.
correct.
Okay. Now, I do have a further question. When staff indicates that this is adjacent to, have we expanded the overlay district to the west side of Meg Street? Is this Meg Street that goes along the side here?
Yeah, that's correct.
So have we already expanded the overlay district to the west side of Meg Street?
Mr.
Fairly-
Chairman, you might remember it was probably a little over a year ago. Maybe it's even 2 years, but it's I think, the shaded area is the district, right?
Oh,
Right, so,
well, if the
so
shaded- if
this
the
is the district, so it's just expanding it that way a little bit.
Well, if
Am
the
I
shade-
correct about
if
that?
Yeah, you are
entire-
correct on that.
If the entire shaded district is in the overlay district, this parcel is already in it.
It borders it. It does not qualify
No,
currently
it's-
for the overlay.
That's not shaded.
Because, yeah, it is unshaded, but it does border the existing.
So the shaded, the lines here, so it's, orange is the zoning category, the shading is the overlay district, and the proposed property here would get shaded if, with the lines if we,
So you're saying it is immediately adjacent to an existing, it actually touches an existing? Okay.
Correct. Yes, that's correct.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
were the property address facing Meigs, it would be in the zone, but is facing Adams, the house. So I think that's the distinction. We've expanded the overlay district to other houses on the next street up, I think, in the same way. But the reason it's not included in the overlay now is because the address is Adams and not Meigs.
Mr. Chairman, now that we've clarified what the application is, I would motion to move things along, I would make the motion to approve the application.
Second. Mr. Chairman, I just have one question.
Yes, if we're in, I guess if it's been moved and seconded, and we're in discussion, so go ahead.
Is this currently a single-family residence?
I believe so, yes, but it's zoned for two.
It's-
but I believe
it's zoned in
single-family
two-family.
residence. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Miller.
Yes, and I have a sort of a clarifying question too, though it seems the answer might be obvious. When you drive by it, it kind of has the feeling like that corner lot is part of that property. But seeing the next slide in the packet where the lot parcels are lined in yellow, it would seem that maybe there are two vacant properties or properties without dwellings that it's immediately contiguous to. Is that correct, or is there, like, maybe the blank lot in between by the next bigger house, maybe that is controlled by the same owner, or is there anything like that going on here?
Staff's unsure, but based on just visual analyzation and driving by the property, it looks like those two parcels are in fact vacant. The one on the corner looked at one time to be a community garden or community resource of some sort. I don't know if that's still in operation, but there are not any properties, or excuse me, structures on these properties as of right now.
And we don't really know who owns those two?
Correct, yeah.
I probably made the motion prematurely because you have to hear from the public here,
Right,
too.
this is actually
So-
a public hearing, so unless there's more discussion on the motions, I guess I would ask that anybody cares, any of the public that cares to speak either for or against would stand and raise their hand and be sworn, and then come to the microphone and tell us what you want us to hear. Is there anybody here in favor of the application?
And
Okay.
maybe the applicant is.
Are you the applicant?
I am.
Okay, would you, first, you agree to tell the truth?
I do.
You're under oath, okay. If you would go to the microphone and tell us your name, your address, and a little bit about this application.
Okay.
Can you state your name?
My name is Sharice Clinton.
Okay, and what's your home address?
It's 629 East Adams Street, Sandusky, Ohio, 44870.
Okay, and without me looking at this, is this address that you're making, that's where you live now, or?
Yes,
Okay, okay. And if this were approved, it seems to me that you're intending to make this transient rental.
I am.
Would you live someplace else then if you did that?
I'm going to live in my RV.
Okay, someplace else.
Yes.
Okay. What else? There were some questions about the adjoining lots. Could you tell us who owns those adjoining lots that don't have structures on them?
Mr. McCarty owns the lot next to my home.
Okay,
It was a community garden. It has the city of Sandusky, all the names on it as partners. He's unable to fix it up right now.
okay,
So I would need a little help with that,
okay,
please.
okay,
The lot behind there is owned by the city.
okay, okay. And you understand that if the overlay district were expanded to include your lot on the application, you would still have to comply with whatever transient rental requirements exist in the city right now?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have any more questions? Okay. Is there anybody else? Do you have anything else to say?
I just want to say that even if it doesn't become one, which I'm hoping that it does, I would like to see that yard cleaned up. I put a lot of love in that house that sits right next door to it. It looks amazing. And when you walk or drive, soon as you reach Dutch Lane, it's like an eyesore. This home is right down the street from the police station in 2 minutes from downtown, and it looks amazing downtown. It's the main road that people ride down to get there. So I would just like for it to look beautiful along with everything else, because the house next to it looks amazing now. And it came from, I have pictures to show y'all.
So are you
Amazing.
talking, are you referring to all of Meg Street from Dutch Lane down further, or just what used to be the community garden lot?
What used to be the community garden, because if you're driving down that street on your way down towards the police station, that's all you see. As soon as you hit that point, it's like, dang, it's bad. So I would still like it to be cleaned up.
Okay. That's kind of a separate issue for
Yes,
your-
I understand.
But that's
Mr.
something I think you could work with the staff to.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
perhaps Mr. Oakes can pass that complaint on to nuisance control and see if they can take a look at it and maybe do something with that property.
I'll make a note to do that.
All right.
Thank you. Anything further, ma'am?
No,
Okay.
that's it. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak in favor of the application? Anybody here who would like to speak against the application? Okay.
Let's vote.
So it's been moved, and so I guess we'll take a roll call on the application, the vote for the application.
Mr. McGorry?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Castile? Yes. Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
Mr. Whalen?
Yes.
Mr. Zuloff?
Yes.
It's been passed.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations, good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Awesome.
The next matter on the agenda is an adjudication hearing. Mr. George Sortino has submitted an application for a conditional use permit at 1420 Sycamore Line. I'm not going to read the parcel number. The applicant would like to remove the existing non-digital message board and replace it with a digital message board. We have it in our packet, but perhaps staff could briefly restate the details on the application.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The current property at 1420 Sycamore Line is zoned for general business. Everything surrounding this parcel as well is zoned general business. It's currently used as a retail store where Rite Aid is. This location has submitted an application for a conditional use permit to replace the existing message boards with 2 digital LED message boards, 1 for each face of the sign. The signs will be facing north and south for north and southbound traffic. The size of these signs are about 5 foot 1 inch by 2 foot 11 inches. The zoning code currently permits digital signs with a conditional use permit, but the sign itself, the sizing and placement does meet the current zoning code standards. So based on staff analysis, staff feels that the conditional use standards part of this are met based on the code requirements. No other departments had any concerns with this. So staff recommends approval of the proposed conditional use at 1420 Sycamore Avenue with the following conditions. That's that all applicable permits are obtained through the building department, engineering department, and planning department And then there were several conditions added to this report after it was sent and finalized to everyone. And these conditions are on the screen now. So condition 2 is that the sign criteria follows ODOT requirements recommended from past digital sign applications with the city. And what I had found is that they had a minimum display time of 10 seconds based on past recommendations. The brightness shall not impose hazard to pedestrian or vehicular traffic, nor a nuisance to surrounding property owners, and that no animations, videos, or illumination with flashing are to occur.
Thank you.
We have a motion to approve.
Yep.
Do it.
Anybody care to make a motion to, for discussion purposes?
I was just going to make a motion to approve the application contingent on the conditions set forth by staff.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Miller seconded. Any discussion? I guess I would note that we have approved similar applications in the past with the same conditions. Seems to me that this is appropriate. Quite honestly, given the size of the sign existing already, I don't think anybody's going to notice the difference, and I think the new one looks better. So that's my take on it. I would be willing to vote in favor of the motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Sewell.
I tend to agree with you, and in fact, I agree completely. A few times in the past, we've discussed, getting this in the ordinance, and there's always been something that winds up being more important, but maybe when the opportunity arises, this is something we probably should slide into the sign ordinance, and then we don't have to cover it every time.
Well, it gives us something to do.
Yeah, right, like we need to.
So, any other discussion? Mr.
Just that I'd concur with Mike that we should, since this is our preferred practice routine, it could be added to the ordinance, and then it wouldn't be discretionary on us.
Right. Anybody else, other comments, or ready to vote?
Ready to vote.
Okay. If you could call the roll to vote?
Mr. McGorry?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Castile?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Whalen?
Yes.
Mr. Zuloff?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't ask if anybody was here to speak in favor of it, but it's too late now. It's been approved, so I guess.
Oh, it was, well, I think, do we have to hear? I missed that.
Let me ask
Somebody
this.
wanted to say something.
Is there anybody here opposed to that application? Apparently not.
Good move.
So, okay, all right. So that, it's been approved, subject to staff conditions and requirements.
I'm not sure we have to hear anyway on an adjudication. hearing.
Yeah, but that way I just cover it. The good news is nobody's here to complain, so. The next item is a matter of new business. American Colors has submitted a site plan application for an addition to an existing building at 1110 Edgewater Avenue. Again, I won't read the parcel number. And perhaps staff could educate us on that a little bit further.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The site at 1011 Edgewater Avenue is currently zoned local manufacturing. It's surrounded by all their other manufacturing zonings, general manufacturing to the north, and then local to the east and west, and then a little bit of also general manufacturing to the south. It's currently used as a manufacturing for paint, and the proposed use is to expand on the manufacturing operation. The site at 1110 Edgewater sits on 10.99 acres and has a proposed building coverage of 14.74%. Staff note on this is that there's a 50% threshold requirement they can't build past, so they're well under that. The existing structure totals about 58,000 square feet, and the current max building height on the site of the previous buildings is 29 feet 7 inches. There is not a height requirement for manufacturing zones. The proposed addition totals 12,500 square feet, and this new addition on the screen now will be used for manufacturing purposes. The proposed site has existing uses of 4,916 square foot of office, 28,184 of manufacturing, and then 37,400 square feet of storage use. The proposal contains 78 parking spaces, which includes 4 ADA spaces, and the existing parking coverage is 14,307 square feet. Proposed parking lot is 43,650 square feet. The applicant has stated there will be multiple shift changes daily for this new expansion. This use is permitted under Code Section 1139.05, main buildings and uses for manufacturing districts. Paint and varnish is listed, which is what the company does. It's produce paint. So, parking standards have been met, or not been met. Staff feels that 78 proposed spaces better suits the site's needs. The manufacturing and office space, where majority of the employees will be spending their time on the clock, is what we focused our math on. Storage space will house minimal employees, but would put the largest parking requirement burden on the applicant. Staff suggests that the additional 20 required spaces be waived by the Planning Commission for this phase. So 96 total spaces is what is required based on the breakdown of the uses on the site plan, and that includes the new use. Like I mentioned, the applicant's proposing 78 spaces, so it would actually not be 20, it'd be 22. So there's additional building expansion to be put on the future. That's not part of this application. If you look at the red square, it's the section below that. The applicant stated they want to come back at a future time for that, so any parking, could be considered in this application, but we'd recommend to not. The proposal calls out for 684 square feet and 2 landscaped islands, each of which has a tree. The code only calls for 300 square feet of landscaping island requirements based on the parking proposed. So the project also proposes additional trees in the tree lawn on the right-of-way, which is not required based on this application. So staff is more than happy with the proposal of the landscaping and feels that it'll go a long way in beautifying this site, which should be taken into consideration. Staff has one overarching question which can be answered now or during discussion, but we are curious how many employees are going to be on this site with the new addition at a time. So I guess how many additional employees will this generate is also a question stemming from that. So the only concern on other departments is that engineering staff has slight concerns over the capacity of the detention pond and if the new parking will still meet the requirements and also not overflow that detention pond. Building had no objections, just to be a note that additional submittals, so in compliance with Ohio Building Code and ADA codes, will be required throughout this process. Police and fire department had no concerns. And based on what was stated, staff recommends the approval of the proposed site at 1011 Edgewater Avenue with the following conditions, and that's that all applicable permits are obtained through the building department, engineering department, planning department, and any other applicable agency.
Would that application process for permits include satisfying the engineering department that the detention pond is either going to be satisfactory or made satisfactory?
Yeah, that's correct. That'll be addressed later on. It's just a note for now, so there isn't any concerns that aren't addressed,
And has it been questioned with the applicant? I'm presuming that they would want sufficient parking for all of their potential employees and visitors. Do they feel that the number will be adequate?
Yep, so that was a staff recommendation based on talking with the applicant, that 78, that's what was proposed, and that's what they feel is what they need moving forward.
You said we would like to know how many new employees, but is it your understanding that potential new employees were counted in already for the number that are needed?
Yeah, we believe so. That was just an overarching question, not directly, impacting to the parking standards specifically.
Is the applicant here, would care to, if you want to come up and identify yourself and,
Randy Schaefer.
why don't you come up to the microphone?
Randy Schaefer, address 2773 State Route 99, Monroeville, Ohio, 44847.
Okay. And I'm sure you heard the question from the staff.
Yes.
Do you feel that any new employees that will be part of this will be covered by enough parking spaces with the 76?
Yeah, so I'm with Janata Herner, we're the design build contractor.
Okay.
Owner, there are two owners reps here, and I can point that direction, question to their direction as far as the number of employees. They do run two shifts, so the number of employees are split between two different times at that, for each of those shifts.
Okay, and as far as the detention pond volume issue, I'm presuming that that's something that your company would address satisfactorily?
Yes, absolutely. So civil design, full site design, storm detention, and the existing volume will be reviewed. Actually, we're in design right now, so, and that'll be submitted to the city of Sandusky for approval.
Okay. Do you personally have anything further to add at this point?
Just a couple other, the ADA question, so that'll be on the building plans, addressing any ADA access to the building. The future addition, right now we propose a future addition there, but the configuration of that and the size is unknown at this point. So that's why we're focusing on the building itself, the building addition.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I have questions about the parking. It's been a long tradition, and the members that have been with us for a while probably remember that we have generally waived parking requirements that the applicant does not feel they need at this time in the interest of reducing storm runoff and demand on our storm sewers and for obvious reasons, and maximizing the permeable surfaces on the site. And I'm sure Mr. Miller will have something to say about this too. So I just want to make sure that we're continuing that, and always conditioned on leaving enough room on the site for meeting the code requirements if some other occupant of the building needs that parking in the future. But it seems pointless to add parking per some arbitrary standard that's not necessary. So I just want to make it clear that I just want to make sure, consistent with our strategy of protecting the water quality and not flooding other people's basements, that you're not being asked to add more parking than you think you need. Is that a fair assessment?
Yep, that's a fair assessment.
Okay, good. I'm glad that that's all, that we're continuing that practice.
Mr. Miller?
I felt like Mike almost begged me to jump in with this. Yeah, I'm historically the one who's been the advocate for pervious paving and pervious parking and not having excessive, but I have a couple questions kind of related to that. It looks like on the diagram that the retention pond is probably has a surround of stone and maybe in the upper right-hand corner is where the outfall of that is?
Correct. And I believe Greg with American Colors could answer a little more. I believe a few years back that was cleaned up and addressed, and you know how detention areas get if they're not maintained. So I think that was cleaned up, and they rerouted some storm to get into there to help the outflow.
Yeah, I think that's what it intuitively looks like. I'm just kind of curious with the outfall, given that I understand that's the railroad track that goes there, there must be some conveyance to go under the railroad track for that outfall?
There's a current outlet on the north end of that detention.
And it goes under the railroad track, or
So yes.
is that confirmed? Anybody? Yeah, I think from my perspective, that's all good, and the fact that the runoff goes there, that can act as a settlement pond, and over time, it might collect some sediment and such, but it really does go a long ways to cleaning up the runoff from the site to have a settlement pond. I really like that. But then I'm kind of curious about Did I understand immediately to the south of that is property owned by the same owner that's not in the bounded red area? It looks like in the diagram, the heavy red line kind of goes over the driveway, which is access to the back.
Yes, there is some existing paving that is gonna come out where the new building is going, and then we're adding, new paving to the west side, and they do own the property all the way down to, is that Cleveland Road? So they own that entire corner.
Yeah, Venice Road maybe?
Yep, Venice.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question not on the subject of parking, and that regards the detention. What was going to be addressed at a later time? Because typically, when a site plan comes to us, all that design is done, so I didn't understand that what was going to be done.
So the detention pond requirements aren't in the zoning code, so the planning commission doesn't have any regulatory process on it. It's just a mention that the engineering department at a further time would like to see this section of the site plan be addressed.
Okay, so that, right, okay. That's what I was trying to get to, is what typically happens is that even though it's not something that planning regulates, it's engineering has to design it, typically that design is done by the time it gets to us, so we know what the site looks like. Are we anticipating additional detention or retention or not? Or do we even know?
I can answer that. So at this point, we are utilizing the existing, and the capacity is adequate for what we are adding.
Okay. So I wanted to put a plug in for, I know this is existing and everything, but I think there's a case to be made for when detention or retention is designed to, number one, avoid dry detention because it just doesn't add anything to the world, and also to not make it add some sinuosity and some varying water depth and some things to make it environmentally useful and make it believable as a natural feature, even if it isn't. Rounded corners and things like that, sometimes it's almost easier to deal with. And then it doesn't look, when stuff starts to grow and stuff, it doesn't look unkempt. It looks like it's natural. So aesthetically, I think at zero cost, you can create something that everybody wins with. Just to put that plug in.
Any other questions from the commission?
Just a comment, again, led by Mike. I believe there is a regulatory process through the county that the city has signed on to, which regulates these kind of detention ponds, and their outflow is monitored and so forth. So I feel like there is an entity, Soil and Water District, kind of helps manage that plan, and the city is a signatory to that plan, and it covers that kind of
Yes.
application.
Thank you. Yeah, and stormwater's on your water bill now, so.
Mr. Chairman, my only comment is, since the engineering staff did say it's just a slight concern, I mean, I would defer to the engineering staff to work that out. And I would also, I'm also curious about how many employees that expansion will generate.
We plan to add 3 to 5 people with the expansion. We're currently trying to add 5 in preparation for it, and then we'll add an additional 3 to 5 once the project is completed.
And business is good?
Business is good. Employee, I guess, retention is not so good.
It's a challenge.
Yes.
Well, I would just like to thank you for choosing to expand in Sandusky, and I hope business continues to be good for you.
Thank you, me too.
Any further questions? Would anybody else, actually, a question was directed to you, ma'am. Anybody here in favor of the application want to speak further?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Anybody care to make a motion on the application?
I would move that we approve the application as presented.
a second to that motion? Any further, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion from the commission?
I would second, subject to the staff condition, which relates to permitting.
I'm presuming that was a
Yes,
part of the motion?
Yes.
So, okay.
thank you for adding that, Mr. Miller.
Just making it explicit. It was
Right, no, yeah, I'm glad, I think it was necessary to do that.
Yes.
But- So, and the second, on the same basis that it's subject to staff conditions?
Yes.
Okay. So it's been moved, seconded, maybe we'll call roll on that motion?
Mr. McGorry?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Castillo?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes,
Whalen? Mr. Zula?
Yes.
Motion passed. Congratulations, good luck going down.
Thank you.
Next item of new business, Mr. Pat Murray has submitted a site plan application for new construction at 2330 River Avenue. Again, I will not read the parcel number. It is in our packet, and I'm sure we've all reviewed it, but perhaps staff could state the application.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The site at 230 River Avenue is currently zoned commercial recreation, and it's surrounded by commercial recreation zoning. Staff note is that the properties to the east and the west are currently residential uses in the commercial recreation zone. The existing use of this land is vacant. It was a house there at one point, but it has since been torn down. The proposed use is a restaurant and bar on this site. The site at 230 River Ave sits on approximately 0.7687 acres and proposes a total building coverage of 10%. The commercial recreation districts have a max of 50% coverage, so this meets that requirement. The applicant is proposing the construction of a new restaurant and bar on the property. The building proposal has a height of 14 feet, which meets the 40-foot max height requirement. Total is 3,300 square feet and has dock options for small boats and jet skis. Approximately 2,100 square feet of this will be used for the dining area of the restaurant and bar. 550 square feet will be for the kitchen. 325 square feet will be used as a pantry/office space, and approximately 325 square feet will be used for restrooms. An unenclosed patio is proposed, totaling just under 1,100 square feet. The applicant has stated there is an anticipation of future development in the plans. The proposal contains 26 parking spaces. The zoning code only calls for 22 required parking spaces, and that's broken down in the report. And the proposed parking area coverage is just under 12,000 square feet, and so is the landscaping. It's also around 12,000 square feet. And based on the applicant and talking with them, the plan is to have operating hours between 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. 7 days a week. In the 2/8/22 preliminary meeting we had with the applicant, a verbal agreement was addressed between Mr. Pat Murray and the western property owner to fix the western property owner's privacy fence. And staff recommends that this should be needed to move forward, and also an additional landscaping buffer on the entirety of the property lines due to the close proximity of the residential neighbors. And this is shown on the plans, but I just want to address that that's something staff would like to see moving forward, that is in fact done. So we feel that that part is met. So since this meeting, a lot has been changed and from the original site plan, which staff is grateful for, and we appreciate the applicant's patience and working with us. And that's an updated landscape plan, neighbor's privacy fence location, and addressing the need to fix that. Traffic flow and entry sequence plan, parking details, building phase plans and square footage, and then a phase 1 location is also now specified. Engineering does have concerns with this. Civil plans, water, storm, and sewer, which will be addressed in the future process, but does have a concern with drainage connections and also runoff onto neighboring properties, and then also the sewer connections, signage plan, and then also stormwater pollution prevention plan. Building staff had no objections other than additional submittals showing compliance with Ohio Building Code and ADA codes will be required in a further process. Chief Oliver of the police department had a slight concern with the parking in this area. This tends to get congested on summer weekend nights and after hours. and that there is a need for additional parking to be required, not required, but addressed in this location with the bar across the street that exists. So based on this, staff feels that the parking is met, the setback standards are met, the height is met. The landscaping is missing one just new tree, which is a slight improvement that we would like to see, nothing major. The use is permitted on the site. So based on that, staff recommends approval of the proposed Phase 1 site plan at 2330 River Avenue with the following conditions, and that's that all applicable permits are obtained through the building, engineering, and planning departments. Condition 2 is that the fence on the western property line is fixed to ensure the proper buffering to the neighborhood residential property. That fence doesn't exceed 6 foot in height, and that also the landscape buffer on the east side and part of the west side where the fence stops is constructed as presented on the plans, and that the civil plans effectively address the city engineering's flooding concerns. And then a parking share agreement letter between the adjacent businesses in place before additional phases are constructed. So that would be Phase 2 or possible Phase 3. So that's not necessarily a requirement for this application, but for future applications to be presented. And then the 5th is an additional tree to be added onto the landscape island in the front of the proposed restaurant and bar.
Thank you, Mr. Oaks.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question about one of the conditions.
Sure, go ahead.
And I don't know, we don't have the law director, do we?
Correct.
I'm skeptical of our ability to condition this on some future action. You know, something to be, it's really typical for us to condition it on, you know, engineering approval and meeting certain conditions, because then it's essentially not approved until those conditions are met. And it probably doesn't really matter, but I'm a little concerned that, you know, number 4, if 10 years from now, this condition isn't met, we can't rescind this approval. So we need to think about that. So, you know, immediate conditions might work, but since it's not a conditional use, we can't, you know, if it was a conditional use, yeah, you could rescind the use even 10 years from now. But anyway, it raised an eyebrow. Looks like great work. Everything makes sense. Congratulate the staff on an excellent report on
Thank you.
possibly challenging project. I'm in particular interested in the condition 3, the flooding concerns, because it's a challenging area. So I'm sure the applicant is well aware. So I hope we address that wisely and effectively. But with that, I'm excited to see this happen. I did want to make a comment that because of the development happening, and this is long-term, I think an attractive place, it's a really neat area that I think is just itching to just see a lot of improvement. But the street is only 50 feet wide. I think it's time to start thinking about some improvements on that street. Just a side comment that we aren't going to decide here, but one of these days we got to think about. There are a lot of encroachments on the street, and they're going to need parking. I think street parking is going to be needed there, just because of the nature of the area and the small lots, and there will be times when it's an attractive place to be. So it's just something to think about.
If I may touch on that. I don't want to speak for the engineering department, but I know that there is plans for next year, possibly the year following, to upgrade sewer lines and water lines on this street, and that also includes expanding the road and repaving it. So that could be addressed in future plans.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Oaks, with respect to the condition number 4 that Mr. Zuloff was referring to, correct me if I'm wrong, but if there's future a future phase, that would come back to us at this point to approve that site plan?
That's correct, and we could put it as a note if it would be a better process for this meeting. I just wanted to make the commission aware that parking, not only through staff's eyes, but also the police department and other agencies' eyes, is going to be a concern moving forward. So I just wanted that to be addressed, because a phase 2 and possible 3 is talked about, has
Kind of
been
a
discussed.
Heads up for.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add one more thing to my comments.
Yeah.
I don't want my comments to be construed to be an endorsement of this use or this zoning. It's an endorsement of the quality of the work. It's going to be it's a challenging area because of the mixed use, residential and commercial, but because the owner has the right to use it this way because of the zoning, I think that we're looking at a good outcome here.
Mr. Miller?
Mr. Chairman, just a question, maybe more toward city staff, but about 2 properties farther to the east, it kind of ends in that public access park, and I'm not sure who owns or controls that parking lot by the rowing club's building, if that's city, if that's ODNR. Yeah, it shows in that, and you can see where there
This
are cars
left picture in the
parked
right
there.
corner, is that what you're addressing?
Well, in the left corner, you can see cars parked there in that turnout area. If you go past that, it goes out to the walkway around the cells of Big Island. My question
I
is,
still have no idea where you're talking.
The left picture on the screen in the right corner of that left
The
picture.
turnaround.
Upper right corner?
Yeah, there's
Oh,
currently a gravel lot.
The Big Island canoe launch parking area.
Correct, yeah.
Thank you.
that's what I'm talking about. I mean, if that is really equivalent to city parking, it seems like the primary use of that would be daytime uses, and the primary demand for parking that's concerning to the chief of police and others is nighttime parking. It seems like that might be an area to consider. And I've been a party to a number of larger events at that site for cleanups, Earth Day kind of things, planning exercises. And when there is more cars to park in that area than parking places, that lawn and stuff just kind of gets filled up, which isn't a problem as long as it's dry. But there is the capacity to put more parking there that might be a parking improvement for all people who use that property too. But beyond that, there's a lot of times when that street is flooded that you can't even get to that other parking area because before you get to it, you got to drive through water. In the city's future plans, what do they do to address the fact that that water comes in from the bay? It seems like if you follow that road up to the left, they've raised that property quite a bit such that overflow water won't go across the road there. It'll want to channel down the road more and come around that corner farther, it seems.
So that's a question probably geared more towards our engineering and public works department. But I'm assuming with the new plans coming in, with the new piping being put on the street, that is something that they are planning on addressing. Once again, I don't want to speak for those departments, but that is staff's assumption that will be addressed in some capacity.
Yeah, I think the water flow, comes into there through a pipe, that it's, maybe a backflow issue or some, mechanical way to deal with it, but of course, mechanical things always fail.
In quick talks with engineering, I know that widening these pipes is part of the plan. I don't know if that's going to fix the problem. I'm sorry, I wish engineering was here to comment on that, but that's unfortunately all I know at this time. Nothing's been finalized for these plans that planning staff's been addressed on.
That's my concern,
Yeah.
not that I would oppose this project based on that. It's just, that's an identified need. Because that area is so often inaccessible in high water years.
And as far as using this existing gravel lot for these two businesses, that is something staff's looking into currently, as if, first off, the legality, second off, if it's feasible, and if third off, if we can possibly even upgrade this lot to make it asphalt and have parking
Those
spaces.
are all
So,
my concerns.
yeah,
You've
that's something, it just comes down to funding, timing, where the funding's going, do we have grant money? That's more or less would be the restraints moving forward with that, but that's something staff's looking into.
Mr. Miller, I think to answer your question, I think the plan is to issue boots.
Or failing that, large bread sacks to put
Yeah.
over your shoes. I'd use that in that area too.
I see Mr. Murray here. Would you like to add anything, or the other gentleman, I don't know? Yeah, come on up. Perhaps for the record, you could both identify yourself with your names and addresses.
Pat Murray, 9610 Darrow Road, Vermillion, Ohio.
And Gary Fisher, Fisher and Associates Architects, 554 West 9th Street, Lorraine, Ohio.
Okay. And it's been, the plans have been presented. I don't know if there's anything further that you gentlemen, since you're here, want us to be aware of, or?
We've had, a couple of meetings with staff actually on site as well as here, and some phone calls regarding the concerns, which are our concerns as well. We're certainly concerned about, the drainage in the neighborhood as well as everyone else is. And we've been talking to the civil engineers. Obviously, by code, we have to keep all of our drainage on site. So, that's certainly a challenge with this site, but that's what's underway at this point. We'd like to actually, work that drainage into even some of our landscaping so it becomes a little more attractive than just, a pipe or a drainage ditch running through the property. And none of the conditions are out of the realm of what we've talked about, and we would agree to all of those. And if you'd like to see what
I
it
just want
looks
to give
like.
you the opportunity to say anything you want to say. That looks great. I mean, I'm excited about something like that down there.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
We're trying to, bring up what I would call a high-end casual type of atmosphere to that area. There really isn't anything down there other than a few small businesses, obviously some primary residential homes and McDonald's, and then obviously you've got Cedar Fair. It's interesting, when I thought of this concept, I thought, wow, we live in Sandusky, Ohio, we've got all this water and we have very little utilization. We have two restaurants on the water, Quaker State and Dockside. But we have nothing, that it's, Quaker State's obviously a chain and Dockside's obviously a private business, but there's not a lot of that in Sandusky. And so we're kind of viewing this as an opportunity to bring, a form of entertainment to the locals and to the tourists. And then obviously employment opportunity for the city of Sandusky, which in turn means tax revenue. So yeah, it's going to be well-designed. It'll have a good cosmetic feel to it, and we're very, very cognizant of the drainage issues, as is everybody on River Ave. I've spoken to Barnes Nursery a little bit, and we're just playing around with the landscaping ideas right now. You guys had alluded to that, those two fence lines on the west and eastern property line. And I've talked to the landscaping guys, and they're like talking about maybe doing river rock, as a form to control the water flow on both the east and the western property line. So we've got some ideas on that. But clearly, we're going to operate inside of the city code that Alex provided for us in our several meetings that we've had with them on site and here in this building. So I don't think there will be any problem for anybody that's near restaurant. I call him Magic Mike, the guy that owns Louis, and he was very, very happy to offer his eastern property as overflow parking, and I offered him the same thing, vice versa. But
Because of the hour.
Because of the hour
The hour
difference.
difference.
Right.
But yeah, I don't, nobody wants to deal with drainage issues, but it's part of the process, and you have to adhere to, the revised code of the city, and that's all there is to say.
By the way, McDonald's used to have docks. Just saying.
They did.
Yeah,
Yeah, but they took.
I missed that.
not in their corporate image.
Yeah. Any questions for the applicant from the commission? Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else here that wishes to speak in favor of or against the application? Okay, maybe one at a time come up and introduce yourself.
You guys can feel free to sit over there too if you want. You don't have to stand the whole time.
Sir, if you could state your name and address, please.
I'm Randy Hensinger from Bellevue, Ohio, 312 Kinney Street. I am here to represent Mr. Robert Herbst, which is the adjoining property. He cannot attend the meeting this evening. He asked me to stand in on his behalf.
Okay.
I will read questions, concerns that he has asked me to pass along.
Okay.
Number one was the water runoff. Where is it going to drain to? To the Herbst property and to Katie and Bill's property. I'm motioning to some other people here that have concerns. The street already has a water holding problem, and there is no drainage on the street whatsoever. Where is the draining going to go to? That is a very big main concern, and you guys already had mentioned that. Number two, from Mr. Herbst, was the parking. It's already a problem at Louis on certain evenings. Where is the parking overflow going to go? In the homeowners' driveways or yards? I even understood when you was discussing about maybe going into the ODNR area, that could create a problem too. I'm just going to ad lib on that because I was paying attention to what you were saying. Number three from Mr. Herbst was the privacy of the homeowners that are adjacent lots and close by. If the building proposed goes to code, the floodplain will be approximately 4 foot higher than the Herbst property and Katie's property. People at that bar at 4 foot above that level where it's actually at, for being at finished floor, we'll be able to look right at the homeowners and stuff. I did hear also about privacy fences and stuff like that, but it's still a concern. Where's your limitations on the height of a privacy fence? Who maintains a privacy fence? Stuff like that. For the fourth thing that he had given me to discuss was the heavy equipment being operated on the property. Dozers, vibratory rollers, compaction for the fill of material to bring it up the 48 inches that it needs to be brought up to meet the floodplain. This equipment will affect our existing homes and structures. Foundations could crack. Vibration roller will vibrate and shake the ground up to 26 linear feet away from where the work is being done. This will cause problems with the foundation and homes. He added a note on the bottom is closing. How do I know this? Because he owns Herbst Excavating Company. We do that stuff. So in Mr. Herbst's closing. He just strongly disagrees with anything that is going to be going on with this.
Okay.
Questions, concerns?
You would,
Just a real quick question. Is the property you're representing to the east or to the west of this site?
It would be
West.
to the west, yes, sir.
immediately adjoining?
Immediately adjoining, yes, sir.
Okay. I think the architect.
May I respond to some of
Yeah.
those? So the drainage, obviously, we do have to comply with the code. There are multiple ways that we can handle the drainage that will not affect the property on either side. Obviously, if there is flooding in the area, we can't control the flooding of
Lake
the
level.
area. We're required to bring our building up and out of the floodplain. Parking, I believe we've answered that, as well as the overflow issue, and we're within code on that. Privacy height, we've actually placed the building so that it is out farther than the houses on either side, and there are no windows looking at those houses. At that level, our focus is on Pipe Creek. In addition, the heavy equipment,
So that you'd have a blank wall, which.
Pretty much,
would
yeah. We're not gonna look-
essentially be a-
right.
Essentially be a privacy fence in its own right.
right. And then in addition, the concern for the vibratory rollers and things like that. We have a couple other options that we can do to bring the building out of the ground, which we're exploring now with the civil guys. And we're on the east side, we're 12 feet off the property line, and we're probably better than, the building is probably better than 30 feet from the existing house. On the west side, we're probably better than 80 feet, linear feet from the existing houses or buildings over there. So those, cease to become an issue.
Okay. Mr. Zoll?
Yeah, I wish I would have suggested that we hear from everybody first so we doesn't turn into a debate and that redundant concerns can be addressed.
Sure.
All at once.
Okay.
Just a suggestion.
Okay. There's at least one other person back there that,
I have all the same concerns. I'm at 2340 River Ave. She's my neighbor. Again,
Can you come to the microphone for the record? Sorry.
I don't know how in the world.
Maybe we
you
should
think
allow
you're
a
gonna
follow-up
put something
real quick
4
here.
foot right beside it. She's
let's hear their.
I'm sorry.
Go.
I just wanted to have one more statement on what this gentleman said
Okay.
about the building pad was 80-some feet or 80 feet from Mr. Herbst's property. I realize that would be your building pad, but you're still going to put a parking area and stuff in, and everything else has still got to come up. And when you put ground on top of ground, you still have to do some compaction. So whether it's a building pad or what, we're not just talking about the building pad, you're talking about the entire perimeter of the property that is going to have to meet some compaction standards before it's suitable
Of course.
for other things. That's the only thing I wanted to add on what you had said to me. Okay?
Yep,
I'll pass
understood.
the mic on now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, we both have the same concerns
Would you
with.
state your name and
Oh,
your
I'm
address?
sorry. Nick Famular. I live at 2340 River Ave.
My name's Kathleen Arthur. I live at 2338 River Ave.
Okay.
So I'll be right next door.
Right, and it's like you said with the parking lot, I mean, I don't care if the building's beside her house or the parking lot's beside her house. Can you imagine having cars all night long with your lights shining in the windows? I mean, that's anyways, it's a building, whether it's a lot, it don't matter. The concern is the traffic and everything being right up here and your house is down here. That's gonna be, I mean, how do you do that? I don't understand how you build something straight up and down 48 inches and then have a property down here right next door to it. You gotta put a retaining wall, how's that? I don't know how that's gonna work. It really puzzles me. And then the parking lot thing, unfortunately, Mr., what is it, Murray?
Murray.
Never come and introduced himself or said anything, so we find this out all secondhand. And from what I've heard, Mr. Mike, his insurance company won't let him do what they're trying to do. Now, I don't know this for sure because nobody
Yeah.
doesn't, I don't know.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, by Robert's Rules of Order, just to keep the peace, you address the chair, not each
Oh,
other.
I'm sorry, I don't know. Unfortunately, I'm here because of this and I don't go
Good,
through this stuff
Please
every day. I'm
please
sorry.
address the chair so that we don't get hot here.
Right, I'm sorry, I apologize.
It's my request.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then there again, the biggest concern is the parking down there is already insane with Louis. I mean, I went through stuff last year that I've never seen. There was 5 cop
I had
cars.
to block my driveway off because people. were
Almost all
parking
summer
on
long,
my
we had to
driveway.
put stuff
Like,
across their driveway just so
I
she could get
blocked
in.
my truck, especially on Sunday nights, I had people would park in my driveway, so I got to the point where I would just block the end of my driveway off so nobody would park there.
I had
That's one
I had to
problem.
mail people mad at me because somebody parked their car in front of my mailbox and lost their keys to their car. That was there for 3 days. You know, there again, I wasn't trying to be mean about it, but hey, she's yelling at me. I'm like, I didn't park it there. I don't.
Right.
We have a major issue down there. Then you're talking about that lot across the street, you know, the nature thing. I actually own part of that. There's an easement on that driveway. I own all the way over to the second mailbox. So there again, I mean, I got no problems with the parking thing. I utilize it when I can, when there ain't nobody around. I have people park in front of my driveway almost every year, and I have to go say something because obviously I gotta get in and out of my driveway. But putting this in there, there is not enough room down there for everything they're trying to do, in my opinion. We already have enough issues down there, and then obviously it's more of a residential. You're putting something like that right in the middle of a residential thing, trying to build everything up. I really don't understand how that's gonna work as far as the drainage and the parking.
Yeah, I think the architect would have to explain how the edge of the parking lot would be. I'm not a,
Well, not even, just the whole lot. I mean,
Yeah.
is this gonna be the edge of his lot, right next to Katie's and Katie's driveway's down there?
Mine's gonna
How's that
be-
work?
yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I might respond. So,
Right
just so everyone understands.
So this right here is an easement. This out to here is mine, and this is obviously all city. Is it
And
cities
they
or
do
states?
already park in that parking
Oh,
lot
yeah.
over there.
I think
Image is probably better.
we've got an ex parte going.
That one's you right
Yes, sir, all the way out to there,
I
yep.
think we all need to be party to this conversation here.
I'm
So
sorry,
not the lot directly.
not Katie,
On the
but
right-hand side,
those other
the
two lots are
second
mine.
lot That has the kind of angled.
Yeah,
Going
this one
out.
actually goes out further than this one. They both go out to
You
here.
get both
Yep.
those lots?
Yep, both those lots are mine.
So, Mr. Chairman, I just so everyone understands, I've been a member of this commission for 20 years, give or take. This zoning predates us. I know that it's quite a bit of residential use there. I can't say that I completely disagree with the commercial zoning, but it is zoned commercial recreation. Do I have that right?
Correct.
It's not within our power to stop a use that meets the zoning code. The zoning code, this has
Don't
been
make the zoning code
zoned that
reflect
way, and the houses there are non-conforming. I don't think they're, maybe they aren't. Are you allowed residential? We have a hierarchical zoning in some cases, and sometimes we don't, so.
Yeah, they do allow some residential uses in the commercial districts.
Right, so
Yep. So they would
housing is
be
non-compliant,
conforming.
but it is legal to do commercial uses there. We could say no and not approve that. What would happen is the applicant, the owner, who has the right to use their property, would simply sue us and we'd lose in a minute and a half. We have to allow uses that conform to the zoning code and that meet the building code requirements and the engineering requirements, all that stuff. So to a certain degree, we're not making a decision on whether this is a good idea. This is, we're constrained by the law.
I got a
right?
question then. So let's go back to the parking lot thing. How can it,
Right.
so without Mike, can the parking lot thing still be just fine with enough spots?
I can address that. So based on the Phase 1 requirements on the zoning code and the zoning code only, there are actually 4 parking spaces above the minimum requirement. So that's why I put in the number 4 in my conditions, that staff is concerned for future phases to where they would surpass the requirement. They wouldn't meet the requirement in these additional phases depending on how they were to propose it. So based on this,
Phases don't work, or they don't happen, or something happens, or
then they currently would still meet the parking standard requirement.
even without Mike's verbal agreement.
For this phase 1, yes, that would still be
Yeah,
met.
and it would be a completely different question. The next phase, who knows? If it didn't meet the parking requirements, this body could easily say, no, we're not doing that. That's not in question here. I'm not even sure that the applicant was obligated to disclose their future plans. They did, but the point is that this plan, as far as my understanding is we're not being asked to deviate from any standards at all here.
So basically,
That's
our
correct.
voices
That
aren't.
we, so we really have no,
Basically what it amounts to.
yeah, we really have no opportunity to say no, even if we hate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just add two quick things.
You got somebody in the audience.
Obviously,
I had something as well, please.
I'd like to let this third person
Sure.
speak
Sure.
and come on up, and then we'll get back to you, Mr. Mayor.
My name's Brandon Bess. I own 2312 River Avenue. Just a couple parcels down, I own the commercial marina, for the one closest to the property here that's up for debate, or whatever.
And what's the name of it?
It's Pipe Creek Marina.
Okay.
So you're a little background. My family's owned the marina since 2000. I took over here over the past 3 years. Ownership's changed hands at this point. I've grown up there. I have multiple concerns, but just to address a couple that we've talked about from a commercial standpoint, because it does affect much more than just the residential occupants, is number one is the parking. We have Louis down there already. We have major issues with parking. I'm not going to go too far and above and beyond that, but we were forced over the past year, after 20-some years of business, to spend over $12,000 to put up a fence along our property line that we never had to do because of parking issues. We had multiple vehicles coming in our lot, being left for days at a time. The police department, I'm very well involved in our community. I've reached out to the police department several times in the matter of this subject, and they can't do anything unless it's been sat for 3 days. So we put a 6-foot chain link fence up against our whole property. We worked with our neighbors. Being that I did grow up in the area, I know half the people in this room. We are all very wrapped together. We all work together. And I don't see this project being beneficial to the area in any way other than bringing a bar down. That's like you said, it's not up for debate. The other issue I have is the water. It doesn't matter what you do to drainage, it's not going to fix our problem. River Rock's not going to solve the issue. I can pull up numerous pictures, as well as Nick and Katie. Randy's probably got pictures on behalf of Bob. Several people in this room can show you where we've had several feet of standing water on our road, on our properties, intrusion into our homes. We all have spent hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on commercial pumps to put in. We worked with, the city. They brought pump trucks down. Same issue they had on First Street. Some river rock along the property edges isn't going to fix anybody's problem. It doesn't matter what you do. A 4-inch drain line wrapped into your landscaping, whatever, it's not going to fix that issue. And it's more than just floodwater from the few years of high water that we have had, and that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. Is our heavy downpours. They cause the same amount of issues because of our grade, where we sit at grade for our homes and our businesses on this road. It's not until you get halfway up the street or to McDonald's that you're really at a safe level. And even there, I mean, I again work with many of the neighbors, and we all work together, and we've helped all the way up the street with flooding, whether it be from the lake or from rainwater. And I don't see a way that you're going to fix that issue, especially not without the city coming in and doing some major reconstruction of sewer lines. And up until that happens, in my opinion, this should not be approved, because it's going to do nothing but cause more issues. It's going to take an area where water currently sits and disperse it amongst the rest who sit lower. And I am a few parcels down. It would be, my first parcel I own is 3 parcels over, but it rolls downhill. It is what it is. And I do sit lower. And just one last point on the parking is, along with that fence, we did, for the first time in 20 years experience, theft and vandalism. We had 2 break-ins into vehicles in our parking lot, as well as the small home that sits adjacent to my property. So it is something that we've had to deal with the mass amount of parking issues we've had. And we put new security cameras in, new security systems. Mike over at the bar has done everything he can. He's trying to work with the city, the police department to help rectify this issue as noted. I know the police department does have their concerns with it as well, and for good cause. So that's all I'd like to add to the discussion in my opinion.
I want to say that personally, I drive by that whole area a lot, and years ago, I used to go down to the very end, and there was a small marina there, Craig Weber, and I spent a lot of time down there, and I live over at Cedar Point, so I'm intimately aware, and I live in a low area over at Cedar Point, so I'm totally aware of both what the lake levels have done and then the torrential downpours. And I understand your concept if you're saying that if this current building lot is a spot that's equal in height to everybody else, it's an area that's gonna support holding whatever water comes down either or flows over, and if it gets raised up, that's one area in that area that's not gonna hold that amount of water any longer. So I understand that argument. I don't know how we solve the global warming, rainwater, and the lakes.
Correct, and I'm on the same page, and that's where I'm not against this project. I truly think that the project could be good for our area and help expand that little area back there and bring, as previously stated, there's only 2 to 3 places to eat on the water you can take, a vessel to, and I really do think it's a great idea as a concept. I think there's a lot of things that need to happen before approval. In this instance, the drainage, like you said, it's very hard to fix. We all have drain to bay on the road. I mean, everybody has it. It doesn't work. The lake level's too high. The drain to bay doesn't work.
It drains from the bay back onto the land.
Correct.
I have the same thing.
So and I do shoreline construction as well, along with the marina. We do docks, boat lifts. It's an area that I can speak in with a good general knowledge in, and that's, in my opinion, the first thing that needs to happen is there needs to be storm sewer brought in. There needs to be serious drainage, considered before we start to expand this area any further, as well as our parking limitations, because they may only need 22 spots, but you can't tell me that a waterfront bar is only going to have 22 people there at a time on a busy summer day where everybody wants to be there. And I know they'll come in by boat and by vessel, but from what I'm seeing, in their site plan, they're not going to be able to hold any kind of significant size vessel. And if they do and allow a significant vessel to come in, they're losing half of their spots. And I can speak from experience on that as well, because we worked with Louis over the past 3 years. We provided transient dockage for Louis Bar. They made an attempt at doing more of a daytime scene and getting away from the nightclub when COVID hit, pre-closure of the sound bar. And we had 50-foot vessels tying up in a 25-foot boat slip. We had to stop it because the vessels got to the point where they were so large that they were impeding my customers that dock their boats there because they're taking up our channel. I see a lot of flaws in this plan, and I see a lot of issues as well as neighborhood coral, and it's something I don't want to see. From a legal law standpoint, I understand where you sit as a counsel. I think there needs to be more consideration for what is actually going to come with all of this. And I do understand phases and where things are going to go, but.
Just to talk about the parking for a minute.
Sure.
Since you live down there and you actually have a commercial operation.
Yes.
Have you and the neighbors worked with the city and Louis at all about that? I mean, is anything going on, or are you just having to fight it every night when it's busy?
It's a constant battle. So I can't say with 100% certainty because I don't have any ownership stake or responsibility for the bar. But being that I know them fairly well, I know that they did reach out to the police department. The police department, they did a couple drive-bys, and then my understanding that Chief Oliver basically stated he doesn't want to put his law enforcement officers in danger because they couldn't send more than one unit, that they would have to pay for basically a private security drive-by in order to have an officer on scene to try and keep the mayhem to a minimum. I do know my neighbor directly across the street, his name is Steve, has reached out to the State Highway Patrol. We've actually had highway patrol officers that'll come down on the busy nights, which are typically your Thursdays and your Sundays as of their current operating standards of last year. Other than that, we haven't had much cooperation from the police department. It's kind of a constant battle that we're dealing with. And even since we've put our fence up, we still get cars that come and park because we are offset from the road. We still get cars that come and occupy. And
So the real answer is you've not been able to work with the city to solve it.
Correct.
And one last question, and this has not been questioned at all by anybody, and I don't know that sound would be an issue with this new plan, but what about the sound levels coming out of Louis at night?
Yeah, so Louis has had a couple complaints here and there from the neighbors that sit on, it would be, according to the way your map set up, would be appear as the west side. The first two homes there have made noise complaints in the past. I know a couple neighbors, we all hear it. It's just a matter of if it bothers you.
Do you just accept it, or has there been complaints by all the neighbors?
It's the people that have been there for a while have learned to accept it.
Okay.
If it usually we don't have issue of complaints. It's more of if it was a rowdy night or something, we talk amongst ourselves. We talk to each other and say, hey, can you maybe limit the noise a little bit next time? And
I don't know if it's karaoke or what, but I can hear it at Cedar Point.
it's probably the karaoke night. I believe it's Thursdays. Yeah, they do a karaoke night. They get a wild bunch in there sometimes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I would encourage anybody who has concerns about noise nuisance, to become familiar with the noise ordinance in Sandusky. After 10 o'clock, there are limits on how much noise you can make, and if you call and complain, they have to respond. And but if you don't know what the law is, you can't really do anything about it, so.
Do you have any further thing to say?
No, I appreciate the opportunity.
Mr. Chairman, I had a couple of questions for this gentleman. What time does Louis stay open to 2:30?
Yeah, typically, I believe it's between 2 and 2:30 in the morning is when they close down, they make their last call, and they shut up shop.
And the abundance of their traffic comes, what, after, say, 9 o'clock or something?
Typically, on the busy weekends, typically begins to pick up between the hours of 9 and 10.
So this operation would be closing at 10, so I don't see, it might be compatible as far as adding cars or additional cars there if they're closed. In fact, he may have to put up a fence to fence his property so he doesn't have the same problem you have with people parking there.
It is a very real possibility. Louis does host several events a year where they open up much earlier than their nightclub scene, and I don't anticipate a parking issue 100% of the time.
And did you say you own that marina facility where that addition was put on? The big addition in the middle of the block?
No, that's the marina up the road. I own the marina closest.
I've always wondered how that affected the water flow down there because they brought in a lot of fill on that property. And I just wondered, I know there's floodplain requirements. I would assume they met those, but I just wondered what happens to the runoff with that property, since it is built up?
Right, and I can't speak on behalf of the owner of that property by any means, but in my experience and my history with the road, the grade level is significantly higher at that point, and they are one of the few properties that does have a legitimate steel seawall, which brings their water height up, and their drained bay is near the higher portion of the seawall, so it does allow the runoff to escape.
Okay. And I've got a question for Mr. Oaks. The city would have floodplain. You would have to get a floodplain permit, and you would have to build to a certain floodplain standard to allow for that runoff or drainage or whatever it would be, right?
Yeah, that's correct, and that'd be geared towards our engineering department once again. So I don't know off the top of my head what that would be. I believe it's 2 feet. There's some 2-foot board that was just passed in the fall, but without the engineering being here, I don't have any specific answers, unfortunately.
Yeah, when I was out at the county, I know we did floodplain regulation, and we would have people either put maybe some sort of a additional capacity on a property or build up so the water would flow underneath. I don't know if that's an option or not. So you wouldn't disrupt the natural flow.
May I respond to that?
Mr. Chairman, just at the risk of getting off into the weeds, because it's not really on our, I'm not against you making a comment.
That's fine.
I'm just warning you that you're getting into wetlands and Corps of Engineers and nationwide permits and floodplain ordinances. And by the way, the 2-foot freeboard was removed from the floodplain ordinance last year, so.
If you could give me the short version, I would appreciate it.
So the short version is when the area is flooding, the lake and Pipe Creek seek their own level. That will not cause any more water. The fact that our building is up is not putting any more water on anybody's property. All it is stopping water that would normally be anywhere from being on our property. Once the lake is high, Pipe Creek is high, it is what it is at that point. Now, when we're draining during normal course of storm season or any other time where there's a rainstorm or whatever, we have to maintain that drainage on our property, and all that drainage still goes to Pipe Creek. So again, it won't raise anybody's, water level at that point. We're not talking about that type of water.
If I can add 2 little things. The hours were kind of, the impetus to our hours were based on Louis' hours. He said they opened roughly 9 to 10 o'clock. And I said, well, I guess it's going to be a big win for you because there's going to be 26 spots, which eclipses the zoning mandate of 22 that are probably going to be, available for parking, which would deter some of the stuff that you're dealing with, sir, with people parking in your front lawns and things like this. So quite frankly, I think if, we want to be good neighbors there. And I think the city has alluded, as some of these gentlemen have alluded to, that they would like to see that area improved in a lot of facets. I kind of view myself as the guy that's taken the first leap. We're going to create some parking down there. Alex alluded to the fact there could be storm drains put in, a new road, a widening of the road. I'm sure that this is the impetus, if you're bringing business in there, that the city's going to be far more inclined to take CapEx dollars and put it there if we're creating tax revenue and jobs and things like this for the city. So 26 new parking spots for you. That's the way I look at it.
I see Mr. Smith in the back wants to say something.
My name is Mark Smith. I'm one of the partners at Flynn Pie and Cruz. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Robert Herbst. I was retained today to come and represent him and ask some questions regarding this matter. If anybody has trouble hearing me, please let me know. This is my last day of having to wear this stupid thing post-quarantine. So if anybody has trouble hearing me, please let me know, okay? I have a question for Mr. Oaks. Regarding the city's municipal zoning code, does section 110901C, does that provide for the...
Can I put off Mr. Smith, please? I believe this is a time for comment, not questions from the gallery. And I'm just wondering if commission has additional questions. This isn't a hearing, if I'm correct, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Who are you hearing here?
This is Brendan Heil, the
This is
law
Brendan
director.
Heil. I'm city's law director, so I can turn on my camera too.
I can't, who?
It's
Our
the
law director, city
Oh,
law.
yeah, thank
He
you.
must be online.
Yeah, I would recommend that be out of order. If folks want to make comments and the commission wants to hear them and entertain it, that's great, but I don't believe the petitioners get to question our staff members outside of a public hearing where they're giving testimony.
This certainly is not a question regarding testimony. It's simply a matter, we're here before for a Phase 1 site plan approval, and this is the Planning Commission, and I just have some questions regarding the plan as it's proposed and how that squares in with the current standards being used. That's all this is. I'm just trying to make sense of this, moving forward.
Mr. Chairman, with full appreciation, and I'm glad to know that the law director is here. I didn't realize that he was present for this because I had questions earlier. We've sort of opened the door. We've allowed other people to comment and unwisely or not, and I don't know that we don't have the discretion. We have exercised that discretion in the past to invite public input, even though we're not required to. I'm not disputing whether we're allowed to, and I do appreciate the advice, and part of me wanted to just go ahead with this, but it wasn't my decision. But I would point out that we've allowed other people to comment.
Sorry, to Claire, Mr. Chairman, my recommendation was just trying to clarify that it's up to the discretion of the board. Mr. Zulauf is correct. If they would like to allow members to ask questions of staff, which is different than providing public comment on a pending issue before the board. Questions are generally applicable when we're in a public hearing, which this is not. And if Mr. Smith wants to make comments in support of, I'm also unclear as to who he's representing.
I'm pretty sure I just specified that, and certainly Mr. Heil, not to cut you off, but this, with all due respect, this is a public hearing. This is a public hearing open to the public that is afforded notice and comment on items on the agenda. It is a public hearing.
This is not. We had a public hearing previously. This is part of the Planning Commission's agenda, regular agenda at a public meeting. There's a difference. And I just wanted to point that out for the Planning Commission. And if they decide to in their discretion allow this to go forward, they may, but they do not have to.
Thank you for that clarification.
As chairman, I would like to ask Mr. Smith a question.
Certainly.
So you're representing Mr. Herbst?
Yes, sir.
And is that someone that spoke already?
One of his, I believe, his employees came and spoke, and I just had a couple follow-up questions.
Okay.
Statements or areas of concern on his behalf that he communicated to me.
How long, when were you retained?
Today, this afternoon.
Okay, so you've not really had the opportunity to meet with staff privately?
No, I have not had a chance. I spoke with Mr. Oaks earlier this evening upon arrival and discussed a few things, but some of the questions that were relayed to me were not previously asked, so I just had some.
You were here for what he stated was the staff recommendations.
Yes, I did hear that.
That any approval would be subject to approved engineering plans, drainage plans, everything.
Certainly.
So I'm curious what your question is.
Well,
Mr. Chairman, I would propose that we let him have his say like everybody else did, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
I guess there's two main points that I had. I guess the first one is just a question for Mr. Oaks regarding the code. Is it, I guess, the staff's position that there's any reasonable use is provided, or pursuant to, I believe it's 110901, when a higher standard is being imposed, is that analogous to a best use standard?
But again, Mr. Chairman, the comments should be addressed to the chair.
Certainly.
Per Robert's Rules of Order.
Certainly, I can certainly rephrase it. Is it this board's position that a best use standard be imposed in accordance with 110901, or would it be any permitted use would be applicable as far as this board's decision on moving forward?
Off the top of my head, it's my understanding that any permitted use under the current zoning.
Okay, certainly, that answers that. The second question or area of concern I would have would be noise issues. Are we talking hours? I believe they said it was 10 a.m. to 11 p.m., 7 days a week. Does that run through the school year?
Other way around.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, we have a noise ordinance. We, hopefully is enforced appropriately and responsive to complaints. We can't enforce noise issues that in absence of regulations.
I understand there's just been a concern with noise issues at another location. Now we're talking about putting one right next to my client's residence. That certainly is an area of concern.
We have to point out that it's a commercial use on a commercially zoned property, and whoever is using that property is obligated to follow the noise ordinance and nothing more. We didn't make the law. And it's probably outside of our sandbox.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay. You have any further questions?
No, I do not. If anyone has any follow-up questions on that, please let me know.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else care to speak? Okay.
Ready to call the question? Or is
All right. We don't have a motion yet.
I have a question.
Yes, Mr.
In the past, we have had at least one situation that I can recall where a developer proposed development that was strenuously resisted by a bunch of neighbors. And in that particular case, I believe in the first round, we thought it was appropriate to collect additional information that may be relevant to the discussion. In this case, it seems knowing what the city's plan is to do with that and how they want to proceed in timeframes and paving and what their strategy is to deal with the water issues might be something that we could consider.
Okay, I appreciate your thoughts. Having lived on the water for a long time, I'm not so sure that whatever happens on this parcel is going to make a difference on, I'm kind of inclined to agree with what the architect just said.
I've said my piece, I'm fine to let it go.
Somebody make a motion.
To start formal discussion, I'm going to move that the application be approved, subject to the staff's conditions and recommendations.
Second.
Ms.
Second
Castile
that motion
seconded.
contingent to the
Okay.
recommendations.
If I could for 1 second through the chair, Mr. McGorry,
Yes.
I just wanted to remind you of Mr. Zulaf's concerns about the staff condition number 4 not being relevant to this, and perhaps amend the motion to omit staff recommendation number 4 for future phases from your motion.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear who's speaking.
This is Aaron Blair.
Oh, hi, Aaron, thanks.
Sorry.
Yeah, I guess I didn't state that earlier on when I questioned Mr. Oakes. I had questioned, was that subject to a future application? And he said yes. So I agree with your comment that really should not be part of the current recommendation.
So is that what we're hearing, is the law director agrees that we should remove 4 as a condition? Is that what you're saying, Aaron?
That's not the law director.
No, it was just me wanting to remind you of what you had said earlier in the meeting.
Right.
So I would clarify my motion,
Eric,
not really amend it, that would be staff recommendations 1 through 3, not 4.
And there's also a fifth one, so if you want to include that.
What's the fifth one?
The fifth one was to add one additional tree to the landscape island that isn't currently
No problem with
proposed.
that, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's the motion. It's been moved. Ms. Castillo, would you agree with those further explanations as a second?
Before I say yes, I just want to, now I'm a little bit confused because I thought there was an issue with parking that we weren't going to face unless we moved into further phases. Is that no longer an issue, or did I misunderstand?
The future phases would have to come before us.
So it's redundant here because they'll have to bring it in a full application. Okay, then yes.
Not something we can enforce.
Okay, then yes, I second the motion.
So it's really, there's 4 conditions. The written fourth one is being removed. There's the number 5, which would move to number 4, is an additional landscaping tree.
So then we are approving the 4, omitting the one that says 4 on the site plan, because I don't have 5, I only have 4 on this
If that was a
document.
verbal addition, my apologies.
Okay, sure. Then yes.
Okay, so, and you're okay with the second?
Yes.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded, so we're into discussion.
I have one question for the architect. There's been some concerns thrown out about raising up everything 4 feet. Can you explain what exactly is going to be going up to what height?
We're required, through the chair, we're required to move the building floor has to be 4 feet out.
So not the parking lot?
Approximately 4 feet. We have to be just above the floodplain. So we're trying to minimize, actually that, how much we need to move up. We're looking at not raising the parking lot up 4 feet. We certainly don't want to bring in that much fill on that site. That's a lot of yardage. So we're looking at actually keeping the parking lot, I'll say, almost where it is, and raising up the building to, comply with flood level. And we'll deal with how to get in and out of the building and how to negotiate that site through the regrading of the site, which is.
Save a
what
lot of
the-
money on mops.
Exactly.
And FEMA insurance.
Any other discussion? We're ready to call the question, I guess?
Mr. McGorry?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Castillo?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Whalen?
Yes.
Mr. Zuloff?
Yeah.
Thank you. The application has been approved.
Thank you,
I didn't
members of
want
the
to
board. We
vote yes
appreciate
either.
it.
Got to do what you got to do.
Is there any other business to come before the commission today?
In regards to the transient rental,
Okay.
I actually, I wanted to make a statement on the record to perhaps provide a path forward for the potential overlay districts. I've talked with Aaron, planning, and I guess, I know Mr. Stuck is here today, and I know there are others. There's one part of this that I'm still looking for kind of some feedback from the group. So, as I've stated in the past meetings, I'm in favor of giving private citizens who have a desire to create a transient overlay district a path to having the opportunity to present at a public hearing in order to have it voted on by the planning commission, us, right? I mean, these guys have been sitting here for over a year, kind of waiting to potentially get it on the agenda, potentially not. To this end, I am publicly committing to make a motion on behalf of individuals or groups wanting a public hearing for their transient overlay district if they meet 2 criteria. So they first would need to work with planning staff to create boundaries for the proposed overlay district. This is the part I'm a little unsure of. I'm thinking a minimum of 40 contiguous parcels. I actually, one of the guys that was just here, I was thinking that area, maybe 40 would work, so maybe 30. But for now, we'll go 40 contiguous parcels, and that they show planning staff neighborhood support with a petition signed by 25% of the parcel ownership in that area. Again, to be clear, this is not pledging support for any of these. It's just giving them an opportunity to get it onto the agenda so that we don't have what we've had here over the last year, them kind of waiting for one of us to decide. And honestly, I spoke with Mr. Stuck, and I'm not comfortable putting forward one on my own without some sort of requirements met by the individuals wanting to do it. The expectation would be that individuals or groups wanting to present proposals would work with planning staff, both in shaping the boundaries and in presenting. And also, I think that, and I will state, this is not an indefinite commitment by myself to be willing to do this. I do think we're going to need a cap at some point, and I think that that's something that either us or City Commission is going to have to take up soon. My purpose in doing this is mostly just to get it to where people are not waiting around for over years to get their potential requests heard publicly. I guess only other thing I would clarify is I intend this to mean if somebody owned 10 lots within the 40, they have the 25% on their own to at least get a public hearing.
Well, the ordinance is pretty clear. I mean, any commissioner could make a motion to introduce specific legislation. It has to originate here, right?
Right. My statement
No. I mean, any commissioner can propose legislation to create a new district. It's got to be a district. If you read the ordinance, anyone who reads the ordinance can see that it's not designed for willy-nilly spot zoning. It's designed for districts. So if anyone has a proposal, they can do that. They could do that because a citizen talked to them, or they could do that because it's a good idea. So I don't know why the staff wouldn't work with a particular commissioner in coming up with a specific legislation. And I don't have any particular district in mind, but I can't say that I wouldn't be amenable to listening to someone's proposal on this board. And it's not often that this body has members who introduce legislation, but we certainly can. And there's nothing stopping us. But what we can't really do is, you can work with the commission, but no single commissioner can direct the staff. Only the committee, the commission can.
Again, now to clarify, I agree, right?
Right,
The
so
point is, any commissioner can. I'm not comfortable doing it with just a phone call, because how do I decide whose phone call to take and who's not to take?
Right.
So if, through working with staff, they show a boundary and some support from the neighborhood, and I would call it a boundary, that's kind of why the minimum of 40 was in there, so that it's a district, as you say, not just a small area, then I will. I'm not comfortable doing it by phone call, and I think none of us are, or else none of us think that these were good ideas. I've thought.
By phone call, what do you mean by phone call? I don't understand.
I'm saying, how do we, to get one up, right? You're saying you would be willing to hear people's ideas and put them forward. I'm saying the same thing. I'm saying for me to hear them, I would like them to work through planning first and do this.
And make a
And then
formal-
I will, if they do
Some
that.
sort of a formal application to start to.
No, I believe what I'm saying is I will put it forward if they meet these two criteria. Whether I think it's a great idea or not, I think that it should be heard in a public hearing.
Yeah, let me ask a couple of questions. So there's been some use of the word district. I don't know that that's clearly defined. It's just a geographical area. It could be huge, it could be small. I'm pretty sure we're talking about not one house, one.
That's right.
Right. 40 contiguous parcels.
But then the question is, what if somebody had an entire square block? Does that necessarily always encompass 40 square individual residences? And I mean, why shouldn't maybe an entire square block, what if 100% of an entire square block agreed? I'm just throwing things out.
Yeah, please,
And
please.
then my other question is, should it really be required to have, I think there should be some support more than just one person. I think that person should go out in his proposed district, whatever he or she defines, and solicit at least some other support. But I don't know that it needs to be 25% initially to have the hearing to discuss the concept before this commission, because then if you set it for a hearing, then anybody in that geographically defined district would have the ability to show up and either support it or object to it. And if some of them didn't show either to support or object, they don't care. So I guess I would say, I think it has to be more than one, but maybe you could say at least one square city block or something like that. I don't know.
So size and percentage, and again, like, I brought this up at previous meetings. So that you know, Mr. Zuloff, I actually went to them to discuss what can I do? Can I make a motion to change the ordinance? And I can.
Yes, that's kind of what I'm getting at.
I can make a motion to fit.
Right, but we've been here for, just as a point of order. As a point of order, we've been here for like 2 hours. By Robert's Rules of Order, we're supposed, if we have a proposal, if somebody cares to make a motion to do something, we can discuss it, but we're just making speeches right now, and that's on something that's not even on the agenda. I'm not saying this isn't merit talking about, but I think we need a specific, let's propose to do something specific.
Didn't we get that in December of 2020 for the Lions Park area and the McDonough Street area?
There's no motion on.
Have we done anything with it but
All I'm
talk
saying
about it
is,
for
what are you
5 minutes
proposing?
at the
Make
end
a
of the night?
motion. What are you
I'm not
proposing?
making it a motion.
Well, then we're
No, I'm
done.
not making it a motion. I'm making a public statement.
Make a point of order.
I made a point of order where there's no motion on the table.
I understand that, Mr. Zuloff.
Thank you.
But like, commission members are allowed to, in general business, discuss other things that are not on the agenda.
Sure.
And so if you would like, I would ask that you respect your fellow commission members' ability to do so. And if there is a motion that someone wants to make, they can. But if Connor would like to have some discussion, that's also appropriate.
If we agree to it, but there's no motion on the table, Robert's Rules of Order is clear. You need a motion to discuss stuff unless you agree to have a general discussion.
Do you have a motion?
Even under other
Robert's Rules
business.
of Order?
Yeah, I don't mind having the discussion, but where are we going with this?
I've made a statement.
I just wanted, I was under the impression that you were making a motion.
No. So I do not, I'm not going to go through the process of an ordinance change. If you guys want to do that, by all means.
Yeah.
But we've sat here and discussed these people's ideas at
Mr. Chairman.
15 straight meetings.
Mr. Miller.
Just to try it out, I would like to make a motion that we authorize Connor to work with staff to bring forward a proposal for transient overlay to allow public hearing that people.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Zuloff seconded. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? And my discussion on it would be only to consider the concept of the parameters of that, and what, I almost hate to include any minimum support other than that there should be a statement of some additional support from people within that district. And because I say, why not let anybody come here and sell their proposal and have a chance to explain, and if it's a hearing, everybody in that district can either show up and support it, not show up, or show up and not support it.
Well, so there could be an ordinance change that allowed that. I would think that would be a little cumbersome on this commission if every month we were gonna hear everybody's ideas of what they wanted. That's why I kind of wanted a minimum amount of support. Again, and I guess please chime in this evening if you have some specific things, because I kind of considered this to be done for what I wanted to do. Now, if somebody really wants to get on, if Mr. Stuck wants to get his area on, he needs to talk to his neighborhood. He needs to get a boundary of 40 lots and get some support of 10 property owners. I'm pretty sure he owns a few. So himself plus maybe 6 or 7 other people.
I'm not sure where the 40 lots came from.
What's that?
Mr. Chairman, I imagine the way this proposal will work is you'll work with staff. They'll put together a draft proposal. You'll bring it back to us, and then we can comment on that proposal, right, before we finalize everything? So with all the questions that we have at the table right now, we don't even have the proposal yet. So I would suggest that we've given you the direction to go back and work with staff. Bring us the draft proposal, and we'll review it. And if we feel changes need to be made, we'll make them at that time and come in for a final proposal. Huh?
Towards it, I'm a little confused because what I'm saying is, we're all free to put forward any overlay district we believe in at any time, right? We've heard of 2 specific ones for the last 12 meetings.
Okay.
I am not comfortable putting forward one that I just think is a good idea, because I think that leads to a crazy amount of potential favoritism in there. So what I'm saying is, I will put it forward. Like, I'm not asking really actually anything from you guys other than when it's time to vote on it, we'll vote on it. If somebody really wants to do one, and they come up with a map with 40 parcels, and they have 25% of the home parcel owners in that map approving it, I will put it forward for us to then discuss and move on that.
Let me ask you a question. So, and you're saying, and it's my understanding from some discussion with staff that I've had, that you feel any commission member could do that. And my question is, if I wanted to do it, could I do it with less than 40?
You could do whatever you want. You can put forward anyone that you want.
And with 20% of the people in the area.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would have probably preferred to see ordinance change that allowed this.
Yeah.
But I feel bad actually sitting here and discussing it for 12 straight meetings and never doing anything.
There needs to be a path forward.
Right.
And everybody on this commission may feel differently about what the minimum parameters or requirements might be. I think everybody would agree that it's more than one guy coming forward with one house. But, so, I think where we're at is if we wanted to hear back from the staff formally, and if they all agreed and the law director agreed with what Connor just said, that we all have the ability to support whatever we think is appropriate. We may not be able to sell everybody on the commission, or there may be enough negative feedback from an area. But at least what I think I'm hearing is we need to be able to have a procedure to rule on this.
Well, I don't think, Mr. Chairman, I don't think anybody would disagree with that. So at this point, I would make the motion that we suspended debate and vote on the motion, informally known as calling the question.
So, Mr. Chairman.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Before you do that, I'm not.
No? Come on.
I'm not clear on what's going on. I had to take my daughter to the restroom, so I apologize for having to step out.
Yeah.
But I want to make
You know what
sure.
motion's on the table?
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm not clear. But I also have a question because from what I hear, you had specific numbers and things that you were talking about. I know you said you're fine with them changing. But then, Pete, you had mentioned something about everybody bringing their own specs to the table when they have a proposal or something. I guess I'm unclear. saying, hey, we want this uniform pathway to being able to allow people in the community to bring something to us without one of us saying, yep, let's do it, which is where I think you're coming from. You're taking that and giving a little more power to the people that, if I understand correctly, that is your goal here. The details about the numbers, you're open to changing. You just want a pathway. Is that what I understand?
Yes, and let me clarify here real quick, because I feel like I'm confused by the motion myself. I'm publicly stating my threshold. If somebody out there wants me to put it forward, and you do this, I'll put it forward.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable with anybody calling me and saying, hey, I think this is a good idea.
Mr. Chairman, what,
Work through that.
just for clarification,
Which we could all do tomorrow.
can Mr. Miller tell us what his motion was?
So we're asking to repeat the motion.
I'd be glad to, as good as I can remember over that much time. My intention was to make a motion to have Mr. Connor work with staff to come forward with a proposal to provide a path forward for overlay districts. Now, to be a little more exacting in the discussion part, I'm not necessarily comfortable that 40 is a magic number or 25% is a magic number. I could well envision a little enclave of a dozen lots that are a nice little district because they are in the corner of someplace that works. Or I could imagine the downtown area as bounded by the same boundaries that we've used for other definitions of the downtown area. That in the downtown area might be a whole lot more than 40 lots, and then 25% might be a difficult number to reach. But let those details be ferreted out between Mr. Connor and the staff. I see that Erin has been on the TV for a while. I didn't know if she had any wisdom to offer to this motion, but that was the motion. I think Mike seconded it, if he still will second it with that explanation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else we can add. Let's get something done here and vote on the question.
So it's been moved and seconded for discussion purposes. Mr. Whalen, I think I'm hearing from you that you feel you and all of us could put forward any application.
We can't.
But your minimum conditions wouldn't necessarily have to be mine.
Exactly.
And so maybe we don't need to, as long as the staff and the law director agrees with his assessment, that we all have the ability to bring forward a proposal. And you may say those 12 lots that have a little area, you may think that's appropriate, and maybe 20% of those lots have come forward and said, we all agree, we want you to do it, and you may think that's appropriate, and so then you bring it forward and we have a hearing on it, and maybe all of those 20 lot owners show up, and I don't know, maybe 50%, whatever, and then we make a decision based on the support and the lack of support and whatever. So I don't know, maybe we don't need to have, maybe we just need staff and the law director to say that Mr. Whelan's assessment is correct, that we all have that right.
Mr. Chairman,
We're in discussion, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Just for more clarification, so from what you're saying and what I understand is, because I was ready to vote on the motion and go, and then I feel like it turned again. So from what you're saying, for the same, let's hypothetical, for the same neighborhood, we could all have different requirements for what we feel is what they need to meet to bring it to us, which means you just have to pick the right commissioner to go to. Do you see what I'm trying to get at here? I guess.
See, the thing is.
Yeah, it's kind of a strange thing, because if you say, we'll all be voting, but if you're saying, in order for us to hear it, you need 40 spaces, and I'm saying you need 5, like, hey, Jay, Can I talk to you for a second? You know, you get where I'm going? I like the idea of working with the staff and coming up with a more uniform, even if it's malleable, if there's some flexibility, but to say we can all just from the sky create our own regulations, it seems confusing.
We're just.
Not our own regulations,
We're all
excuse
just making our own decision. on
Our
what
own
to bring
decision for
forward.
what a community member has to satisfy to bring it to us. Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Yeah, just to finish, that's all I was going to say. It's just, excuse my language if I'm not using the correct terminology, but what I mean is for all of us to be able to just, whatever we decide you have to meet is what you have to meet. Depending on which commissioner you ask, it might be different. I feel like that's going to create a lot of issues.
That is the current case, though.
Mr.
Yeah, may I
It's basically,
for a second?
Yeah, sure.
only we don't have.
Yeah, I was going to say, what, can we let the staff weigh in and
Yes,
maybe offer?
yes.
Who has the floor here?
Staff
I was
does.
Yeah, I thought that's what we were
Aaron-
doing, and then
Aaron-
you guys kept
Aaron
talking.
does.
So I kept talking. Hi,
Aaron,
Aaron.
go ahead.
Hi, no problem. Sorry I had to join you remotely today.
Yeah.
But the current ordinance states that whenever it's deemed appropriate and in the interest of the general welfare of the city, a planning commissioner can initiate a public hearing to consider a transient occupancy overlay district. So I think that's what I'm understanding Mr. Whalen is saying is that that's his interpretation of what's appropriate and in the general welfare of the city. Is if those conditions, if that happens, then he's willing to make a motion to get that hearing, which is in the current ordinance. So you all have your discretion now if you want to make a motion to set a public hearing for a transient rental overlay district, whether it's 5 properties, 1 person, 100 people, et cetera.
And, I mean, I guess to further that point,
I know.
we've heard these two that I thought were both pretty good ideas
Yeah.
from the beginning. I just have thought it's a slippery slope to start jumping in on me at least being the guy that's gonna put it up to our commission, because then I'm gonna start getting a bunch of phone calls, right? And I don't have time to go out and investigate all of everybody's ideas and talk it out with them. And so I would prefer, like what we had with his area on McDonough Street or Lions Park, obviously none of us are comfortable putting it forward based on just that, because none of us have, or maybe I'm the only one that thinks it's a good idea. I actually think both places is a good idea.
Personally, and I think I've said this before, the Lions Park area issue, that gentleman came to me as an attorney, and I suggested I actually drafted a letter that he could send out, and he probably sent 100 letters out. But at this point, I'm thinking that it just comes back to, it starts with staff, and then staff can approach one of us to make a proposal based on the area that's being proposed and how much support there is. And I'm personally would be willing to submit one. I think it depends on the area. If it's a little cul-de-sac area, like you were mentioning with 12 houses that are kind of just back separate, or those condos, for example, over east of Lions Park. That's just like a little residential area. If 5 of those condo owners came forward and said they'd like to do that, maybe that's less than 25%. I don't know how many there are over there. But even you, Connor, might then say, well, in that particular one, it doesn't have to be.
I might still vote for it.
Yeah.
I might still vote for it. I'm just saying my threshold to put it forward.
Right, okay.
I'll still vote for
Yeah.
most of them, because I think they're good ideas.
So anyway, I don't know, does Steve?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
in the way the ordinance is written, it is the way it's written, right? But I guess what happens if there's no standard? How do you deny people? I mean, if somebody comes in with 2 and they want to do it, if somebody comes in with 20 and they want to do it, how do you deny them?
2%,
Because they're going to, no,
2% or
two houses. How do you deny people when you approve this one and you got no standard, you just
Well, I think
you just
raise a good
approve?
point. You wouldn't deny it based on the number. You deny it on the standards that are clearly stated in the ordinance.
I guess
Or
maybe
deny it
I
or
need-
approve it. So the standard, the criteria for approval are fairly lucidly stated in the ordinance. So I'd say answer that question by looking at the ordinance. It lays out reasons for doing this. And I would agree with you that you definitely shouldn't arbitrarily set a number, because there's nothing in the ordinance about a number, right? So I agree with you. I think you raise a good point. But we should be talking about the motion.
At this point, we're still in discussion. I'm wondering if we need a motion, because I think.
We have a motion, and if there's nothing more to talk about, we need to vote on it.
Well, there was something more to talk about. We're still in discussion, and I said.
Oh, okay.
I don't know that we need a motion, so I might vote it down because we don't need a motion. But.
Good point. Yeah.
I don't know if Mr. Heil is still here with us. I see
He's muted.
I don't know.
He's here.
I see a BH, but.
I'm here.
Okay. Do you understand kind of where we are? I mean, I think I'm hearing from the staff that any commissioner, planning commissioner, can present any application for an overlay district.
So I believe what Mr. Whalen's attempt was to do tonight was to publicly state a potential process that he would find acceptable, bring forward a motion or a request for a transient rental overlay district. Because currently, the only people that can initiate that discussion is the city commission and the planning commission.
Okay.
Which means the planning commission needs a motion and a vote to set a hearing. And unlike everything else, not everything, but most of the other things that we do where a resident can apply. And so I believe all that this was an attempt to do was to explain how he would interpret wanting to bring forward that motion. And now we've had a pretty robust discussion about that. Does that help answer your question and clarify? But yes, if any member of commission would like to move that a transient rental overlay district be created in a specific area in whatever realm, they may do so. And then if that motion is seconded, sorry, not created, but if to set a hearing for it.
Right.
If that motion is seconded and passes, then the public hearing happens and the process continues.
And it's up to each individual commissioner that would make that proposal or make that motion to determine the parameters in that motion, the district itself. And,
yes.
And could say we've got this much percentage support, whether it's 10% right now, and we think we might get more, but at least we've got 10% right now. So, and that's.
Sorry.
And that was my only concern was, it doesn't mean it's gonna get approved, but the commissioner could say, this seems viable to me, I'll make a motion for a hearing and then we'll see what happens. Is that an appropriate assessment?
Yes, although I do think we would have to, in that motion, clarify what specifically the type of district you're trying to.
Yeah, the area, the coverage, certainly. Okay, all right, well then, unless anybody's got more discussion or questions for staff, I think we're back, as Mr. Zuloff said, to the motion. And I don't think we need a motion, so I'm gonna vote no, but.
All right, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah.
My intent in making the motion was to have a mechanism to get staff recommendation into what guidelines are most appropriate. I'm a little concerned about Mr. Connor's kind of 40 and 25 seem arbitrary, but I'm trying to download it because I don't really want to receive petitions from any individuals for me to bring forward without a standard. And my suggestion was that staff, in conjunction with a passionate person who I agree with, there needs to be a mechanism to go forward. I wouldn't mind doing that myself if Connor's not the one that we want. But a subcommittee, that gets kind of complex. I think a couple of people, let them see what they got, bring it here so that we can resolve this and move forward with it. That's really my
So
intention.
is your motion that the request be from the citizen come through staff, then let staff approach one of us?
My motion is to have staff work with a commissioner to come up with a plan of how to bring forward what Connor thinks is a good idea, what I agree was a good idea, but the boundaries just seem kind of arbitrary to me. But I'd be glad to offer my input into that process to come up with a process that, other than coming to an individual commissioner, because that does seem to be like spot zoning.
But the motion was for Mr. Connor to meet with the staff.
Mr. Whalen, I think.
Mr. Connor Whalen, yes, sorry.
I said it first.
It's been a long day.
Could we amend the motion?
It's been a while, so I don't remember the motion.
To have Mr. Whalen and Mr. Miller meet with staff?
I second that.
Wait,
If you're making a motion to amend the motion, I second.
Yes.
We can amend the is that a motion?
We have to withdraw the other one?
Is that a motion to amend the motion?
Yes.
That you can do. Second.
I'll accept that motion as a friendly amendment to my original motion.
Yeah, and it was seconded. So
Okay, let's call the question.
Okay.
on the amendment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. McGorry?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Castile?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Whalen?
Yes.
Mr. Zuloff?
Yes.
Okay, and then we have to vote on the motion itself as amended, correct? So we'll call the
Yes.
question on that.
Mr. McGorry?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Castile?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Whalen?
Yes.
Mr. Zuloff?
Yes.
Connor, it's you and me meeting with Aaron. We'll work it out.
There you go.
I don't think that it would be out of order if something were put forward next month. Part of this push is that I feel like the people that have been asking
There's
for
at least- there's at least-
two groups that have been asking
Yes.
deserve to be heard
Works with
at this
this.
point.
Motion to adjourn.
I may say
Second.
something, this is off topic of the last discussion, but we do have 3 applications for next month, just so you guys know. There's a rezoning proposal and then 2 site plans as of today, so we'll be meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I made a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Lord.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, I did mean to say, next time at the beginning of our meeting, and you all can leave, could we be
you're still there?
informed about who's with us?
Please read the ordinance before we talk about this.
Because I didn't know the law director.
Obvious that half
I know
of
you
us
said
have
she was joining, but she never said anything, so I didn't know if she was on or not.
Yeah.